why, Mama? Explain to me why a seasoning company feels the need to put a sifter cap on a bottle of cinnamon sticks. It's Alirien, and today we are making our recipe for Mabon, the autumn equinox, which is mulled apple cider. Now, not everything in this is necessarily always associated with the equinox proper, at least not in terms of pagan celebration, but my family always make mulled cider as soon as autumn hits, as soon as it starts getting cold outside. It's one of our favorite things to do, and it's super, super simple. I'm basically showing you what we always do for apple cider so that you can give it a try as well. This is probably going to be the shortest and simplest of these recipes that I ever do for y'all, but I hope you give it a try and you like it as well. So Mabon, being the autumn equinox, does mark the second harvest. It also marks that harvest is starting to come to a close, and it is a time for celebrating abundance, especially all of that which you were successfully able to reap in the harvest. It's a time for making all of the really hard decisions. What are we going to keep? What are we going to store in order to be able to get through the winter? What are we going to use now because it's fresh and we're trying to celebrate that we have this? What are we going to share with others? How much do we have to share with others? And what are we not going to reap? What are we going to leave behind to die on the vine to remineralize the earth so that we can successfully plant new crops next year? It's a time to prepare for the winter, because now that it's harvest, you know that the winter is coming. It's going to be long and dark and hard and harsh. Face that reality. But it doesn't have to be so somber that you're all serious all the time, there's no fun. That's why it's a celebration. You're celebrating the friends and the family you have, you're honoring all those who came before you, who gave you the opportunity to be here on this earth at this time, and you're taking advantage of that opportunity of being on this earth now to prepare for the next generation to be able to survive as well. You're not only celebrating abundance, you're celebrating that your line has survived and that you will be able to survive the winter. It's a celebration of hardiness and just how resilient the human spirit can be. I think that's really cool. These ingredients all sort of pull from similar ideas of Lunasa, which is also a harvest season and a harvest-related Sabbath. It also pulls in some of the ideas from Samhain and Yule, as it is halfway between Lunasa and Samhain. It's also halfway between Yule and Midsummer. So, very, very simple recipe. I have a gallon jug of apple cider, which is unfiltered apple juice. I got this at the grocery store in the produce section for like $12 a jug. I'm sure your grocery store sells it for a similar price. And if you can't find the unfiltered apple juice, the true apple cider, because that's all it is really, it's apple juice with pulp, is essentially what it is. If you can't find that, you can just use regular old apple juice. You could even use sparkling. I prefer the flat stuff, because carbonation does not agree with me. We also have cinnamon sticks, clove, and allspice. I'm using the whole stuff because I like to have that stuff in my carryover into my glass when I pour it. You can of course strain that out when you serve this, or you can use powdered if you want it to sort of disperse into the liquid a bit more. But the idea here is that you are putting everything together in a pot and letting it simmer together to infuse all of those flavors into the apple cider, and then serving it warm. This is great for parties and potlucks and all sorts of things like that. I almost always end up lugging this thing and all the ingredients over to my friend's house to play D&D after the equinox at least once, because I have several friends that they tasted the cider once and they raved about it. I even had my friend's son asking me last year about the recipe, and I was like, it's not really a recipe, I just throw these things together in a pot and let it get hot. So, super simple. Cinnamon, allspice, clove, I use the whole stuff. You can of course use it ground if you prefer. I also have navel oranges. I'm probably only gonna have room for like maybe half of this orange, we will see, but I will be slicing this to go in there as well, throw in some citrus flavor. As always, I will go over the correspondences of any ingredients that we haven't covered in a previous video in voiceover while we do this. I think that's only the orange at this point. I think I've covered everything else in previous videos. If you haven't seen those, Go check out my DIY playlist to see the other ones. I believe the apples are covered in the Lunasa apple pie video, and the other spices I believe come up in the eggnog video from Yule from last year. So yeah, we're gonna get this bad boy plugged in and fill her up and turn her on, and that's basically it. So the only real equipment you're going to need for this is a slow cooker or a crock pot or an instant pot, or if you don't have any of those options, you can just do this in a big pot right on your stove. You also will need a cutting board and a knife if you're going to slice up any citrus to go in there. I'll grab that in a second once I'm ready for that. We're going to take our jug of apple cider, and I'm gonna fill this up, not quite all the way because you want to leave room for particularly the orange slices, because obviously liquid displaces when you add more volume and more objects into it. I'll probably fill this 90% of the way up to like the first lip in here. Let me move my book before I turn this on. And start slowly so you don't splash it everywhere. I actually don't think we're gonna hit that line. If we do, it'll be close. Oh, yeah, we're gonna stop there. This fits almost an entire gallon. So now we're gonna take our cinnamon sticks. I am gonna use these. These are the last two from the last jar of cinnamon sticks. As I said, I do prefer to put them in whole. We'll put 3 more in there. Oh, that was 4. That's fine. Next we'll do the clove. I'm just doing enough to kind of fill my palm, basically a handful. If I were using ground spices, I would sprinkle enough to sort of cover the top of the liquid, but with the whole spices you don't necessarily need that much. And now we'll do the same thing with the allspice. And these are not the only seasonings or spices that go into mulled cider. You can get kits of pre-mixed mulling spices a couple places. I'm pretty sure World Market sells one. I found a bag, I think last year or the year before, that I left at my friend's house, so I'm pretty sure it's gone now. But it had a lot of the same stuff. It also had star anise in it. It had orange peel instead of, whole orange, because obviously they can't put whole fresh orange in a, vacuum sealed bag to sell on store shelves. You can throw nutmeg in this if you want. And obviously if you have an allergy or a distaste toward any of these ingredients, you can substitute in or out, whatever you prefer. If you don't like orange for some reason, you can probably use lemon or satsuma. I'm sure those would go fairly well. If you really like grapefruit, I'm sure that would go pretty well too. We just tend to use the nice big navel oranges because it gives you the most bang for your buck. Cutting board. I'm like particularly talkative today and I don't know why. Knife. And I'm gonna roll this. I always recommend rolling your citrus on your surface before you cut into it. Works up the juices and loosens them. It's even tastier. Cut off the butt there. Cut off enough of the butt that we can get a full, nice, gorgeous slice. There we go. A pretty thick rind on that orange. Damn. Oh. It already smells so good. And you can, of course, if you prefer, turn the warming on before you do. In fact, I'll go ahead and pop this on. And there is a little light on the thing to let me know that it is on. So I'll let that start warming up while I slice this.
Oranges are a fiery, masculine fruit associated with the sun, love, divination, luck, and money.
Probably should have grabbed a larger knife for this, but it's getting the job done. I think those 4 slices will do. So yeah, I used about 2/3 of the orange. I'm gonna use a ladle to give this a good stir. And I have it on high. I'm gonna cover this and leave it on high until it starts to bubble. And once it starts bubbling, I will drop it down to low, and you can serve it then, or you can leave it to sit for 30 minutes to infuse a little more and then serve. Totally up to you for how strong of a spice flavor you want in your cider.
Got 20 minutes.
30.
Now, one thing to note about this recipe, because of the myriad ways that you can go about doing it, your mileage may vary when it comes to whether you're using a slow cooker or crock pot versus an instant pot, which I'm sure has a recipe in their cookbook for how to do this, versus doing it on the stove. A stove is going to let you get up to a simmer, if not even a true boil, pretty quickly. But even then, the amount of time it takes will depend on whether you have electric versus gas, how big your burner is, how big your pot is, did you turn the burner on before you added your stuff or after, etc. So your crock pot might not even actually get up to a proper boil before you want to turn the heat down. I would say leave it for at least 30 minutes, check it every now and then, check to make sure that it's at least heated thoroughly. Once it is, then pop it down to warm and people can serve themselves as they need to. One other thing I thought of while I've been waiting for it to warm up is that you don't have to have the herbs, the spices, loose in there like I do. You can do what a lot of people do for curries and for pho and for several other recipes and put them in a sachet, tie that off, and then put it in there. That way, if you're not someone who likes to have to fish bits out of your drink and you don't want it muddled with the powdered spices, you can have the spices infused into the cider and also not have them floating about in your cup when you serve. But it's been long enough, it's hot enough for me, so I'm gonna go ahead and pop this down to warm. And do be careful, I have an older model slow cooker here and the controls have actually heated up with it, so be very, very careful when you're handling around a warm crock pot or slow cooker. I have my mug ready to go. Oh, that smells amazing. I'm gonna give it one more good stir. And I can feel the cinnamon sticks knocking around at the bottom. They've gradually sunk down as it has warmed up. And now I'm gonna try to get a ladleful without any of the cloves and allspice, just so they can sit in there longer and infuse the rest of this. How long this takes also depends on how much liquid you actually put in here. If you were to only do half a gallon, that'll warm up faster than close to a gallon like I have here. I'll put the lid back on so that the heat doesn't escape. That's one important thing. Make sure you keep your lid on there to keep everything contained and keep as much of the heat in there as possible. Here's our first mug of cider for the year. Smells so good. And of course, like I said, the longer you let this sit, the warmer you let it get, the more you let it all mull together, the more fragrant, the more flavorful it will be. Oh, I forgot. I usually come right here. Let me zoom this out so you're not... There we go. This is the perfect temperature. Honestly, I could probably put a little bit more of the spices, the solid spices in there. Or sometimes what I've done is I've used both. I'll throw in the whole stuff and sprinkle it with the ground stuff. That works especially well when you need it to really infuse a lot faster. More spices, stronger flavor. But this is perfect. It's like still 80 degrees outside during the day down here right now, but it doesn't matter how hot it is outside. Once I start making cider, it feels like autumn. One other thing I forgot to mention at the top is I mentioned that you could also do this with sparkling apple cider or flat plain old apple juice if you can't find the unfiltered apple cider. You could also try this with hard cider, or you could spike this with whiskey or rum. We've definitely done it with spiced rum before and it was fabulous. A really good whiskey, especially an apple flavored whiskey, would go well. Caramel flavored liqueur would work. There's a local place that makes a pralines and cream liqueur that I think would go fantastic with this because that also adds the pecan note that's very popular with autumn, especially here in the South. So there's a lot of ways that you could go with this. Mulled wine is also an option. We have the Heroes Feast, the like official Dungeons and Dragons cookbook that was put out by Wizards of the Coast, and they have a dwarven themed mulled wine recipe that also uses brandy. And it's a lot of the same spices, but you use a hearty red wine and some brandy, and that is your base instead of the apple cider. You could try all sorts of things. Red wine is usually what you want to do with mulled wine. I usually associate that closer to winter though. So maybe we'll make that when Yule rolls around. We'll see if I continue the recipes into next year or if I take a break and then continue it the year after. We'll see. Yeah, I definitely recommend giving it a try. Let me know if you try it, what you think, anything you do differently, and what works for you. Happy Mabon! Sláinte. Thank y'all so much for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, you know where all of the buttons and the links are at this point, I would hope. You've probably been on YouTube long enough to figure it out at this point, right? If you do give this recipe a try, make sure to send me your attempts, your videos, your photos, your thoughts on all of the social media, whichever one works for you. You can find all the ones I'm active on and getting up to my shenanigans in the link tree below. Also, if you give this a try, you can let me know your thoughts in the comments right here under this video. If nothing else, I do hope you will subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. We are on the slow march up to 250, so if you haven't done so already, subscribe. It's free. If you would like to see more content like this video specifically, I have, as mentioned at the top, my DIY playlist linked in the cards and in the description, where you can find other recipes as well as some other not necessarily costume or clothing related sewing things and, like I said, general do-it-yourself projects. As always, I'd like to give a special spoken thanks to my coven of patrons who continue to be my biggest supporters, and if you, dear viewer, would like to join their ranks, again, check that link tree below where you can find my Patreon, which starts at $1 a month. Thanks again, stay tuned for the Mabon Sabbat tarot readings, as well as more build footage for Sybil and more gaming VODs. We're on Animal Crossing right now, I think, and I'll see you all again very soon. Keep aiming, my loves, and blessed harvest.